Deree, I'm the coordinator of the International Cash Management Society. Today I have the honor to introduce Ms. Sofia Perpera. Ms. Perpera is a trained chemist receiving degrees in Immunology and Mathematics from the University of Rome in 1997. Following her studies, she worked harvest at Chateau Madeleine Premier Grammar Glacier de Saint-Emilion and Loyola de Paris, and afterwards worked for the Greek Wine Federation from 1998 to 2002, eventually becoming the office manager. In 2003, Ms. Perpera created All About Greek Wine, the first company to execute a national promotional campaign for Greek wine in the North American market. She continues to help coordinate the marketing strategy of Greek wine abroad as director of the Greek Wine Bureau of North America, sponsored by the National Interprofessional Organization of Vine and Wine, which coordinates the New Wines of Greece promotional program in collaboration with the Hellenic Foreign Trade Board. She continues to consult the Greek Wine Federation, specializing in EU policies affecting the Greek wine sector. In 2011, Ms. Perpera was declared the best ambassador for Greek wine abroad by Wine Business International, and for the last 2 years made the list of the top 100 most influential wine professionals in the US market by intowine.com. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Sofia Perpera.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm very honored to be here. I'm going to tell you an interesting story, I hope, about what can happen in business, even in Greece, if you have a good product, a product that you believe in, and your persistence. You stick with it even in the first difficult years. Over a decade ago, when we first began our work in the US, it was difficult just to get people to try Greek wine, much less write about it. But that has changed dramatically. Recently, one of the top US wine bloggers wrote an article about the annual survey that the American Wine Markets Council recently released, and his opening statement was, if you want to identify a high-end wine drinker in the United States, look for the guy drinking a bottle of Assyrtiko. Last year, Eric Asimov, wine writer for the New York Times, urged his readers to start looking for alternatives to Pinot Grigio. Pinot Grigio is the second most popular white variety in the US market. According to the New York Times article, there were many more interesting white wines to try, mentioning specifically those made from the varieties Muscofiller, Assyrtiko, and Rhoditis. When the Professional Sommelier Journal conducted a poll asking which unknown grape variety should become more prominent, the top choice was the Greek variety, again Assyrtiko. According to Eurostat statistics, the sales of Greek wine in the US for 2012 were up by more than 35% from the previous year, reaching more than 8.5 million euros, and in Canada, up by almost 56%, reaching more than 4 million euros. It is also worth mentioning that the recent study by Wine Intelligence on behalf of the European Commission on the competitiveness of European wines included Greece, along with Spain, Argentina, and Chile, as the most important emerging winemaking regions for US consumers. When I moved to the US in 2002, it didn't take long to find out that the image of Greek wine was either non-existent or probably negative. Although Greece was one of the world's top travel destinations, it did not include wine as part of its identity, like France, Italy, Spain, and other well-known wine-producing countries. Greek wine, as its own category, was absent from the editorial calendars of wine publications, while sommelier, at best, would probably have heard of Retsina or Mavrodaphne as a question on wine test designed probably to trick them. Greek wines, if you could find them on mainstream restaurant wine lists, would only be found in the other category. I'm a trained enologist, having worked at Harvest in Bordeaux and also here in Greece. After training, I had the opportunity to work for the Greek Wine Federation, an organization of the private wineries in Greece. During my 4 years at the Federation, I got to know firsthand the winemakers, the vineyards, and the true revolution that was taking place in the Greek wine sector. In the US, it was difficult to watch the well-managed promotional activities of other established wine-producing countries and the complete absence of anything in relation to Greek wine, although I have to say it was a great motivating influence. Another big challenge confronting Greek wine, and any wine region, were the obstacles to establishing distribution. In addition to the lack of awareness of Greek wine, you could rarely find it in the stores or in mainstream restaurants. In fact, outside of the New York area and a couple of other large cities, it was almost impossible to find Greek wine, and what you could find was usually not very good, certainly not the world-class wines that I knew were being produced. Most of the US distribution of well-known Greek wineries was in the hands of small mom-and-pop Greek importers whose target was the Greek community, and where they also sold cheese, olive oil, and other Greek products, and wine was more of an afterthought. The Greek importers lacked not only the knowledge of the products, but they were unable to relate to the new breed of American sommelier who controlled the wine lists in good restaurants. In addition, because of limited financial resources, they could not adequately service a huge market like New York, much less establish any kind of regional or national distribution network. When I first got to the States, I helped out a couple of younger, new generation of Greek American importers I had met in Greece, which gave me the opportunity to learn the complex US market. I approached American importer distributors, wine marketing and PR companies, and gathered information from salespeople on the streets. I also looked at successful marketing programs from other regions and gained a good sense of what it would take to change the image of Greek wine and establish it as its own category. It was going to require some common sense, passion, a ton of persistence, and a product to believe in. For this, I had no doubt that Greek wine could compete with the best from other regions if we could just get the message out and people to taste the wines. The internet was being used more and more to connect people much easier and faster. Social media marketing was still just beginning to catch on, and this was another opportunity that we saw would help us get our message out. I decided to come up with a plan for a campaign in the US that would require wineries to work together for the common good of Greek wine. During the summer of 2003, I returned to Greece to present my ideas to a group of wineries that I felt shared similar goals. One was to produce high-quality wine, and second was a focus on export to the US. The wine consumption in Greece is more than 60% bulk wine, so concentrating on exports was a virtual necessity for survival for wineries making quality bottled wine. As it turned out, this early move to concentrate on exports became a vital safety net when the domestic Greek market was pushed to its limits due to the economic crisis here. The wineries who had established exports as part of their business plans were all better positioned to handle the crisis in the domestic Greek market. The group of wineries I had approached decided to support a common initiative, and so we created a company called All About Greek Wine. The first coordinated national campaign for Greek wine in the US was financed privately by the wineries. My husband, who was born in the US and worked for years there in the food and beverage industry, joined me full-time after the first year, and we have been working together on this campaign now on our 11th year. The energy and momentum that came out of these early meetings was unbelievable. The support from this initial group of family-run wineries to create a long-term presence for Greek wine in the US market essentially laid the foundation for all of the joint national programs that have followed. There was not always agreement on everything, but one thing was certain, and that was that the wineries would have to stick together to make it work. Any new winery that wanted to join had to have the approval of the member wineries. Quality was our most important resource, since we would have only one chance to make a good first impression. We kept it simple at first, trying to get the message across that Greek wine was good. Other regional campaigns were well financed and used some of the top marketing companies to plan and execute their strategies. We initially approached some experienced marketing and PR firms, US firms, for help, but the cost was prohibitive. So we decided to take on the project by ourselves, using other regions as a model and adapting them to the needs of Greek wine. Because in the beginning the activities were privately financed, we had a relatively limited budget compared to other regions, so we tried to keep it simple, stay focused, and make every euro count. One expense that we did not spare was to hire top American professionals who believed in Greek wine to help us present our message and give our wines their endorsement. It didn't take long to gather a solid group of prestigious wine personalities that began to get the word out that Greek wine should be taken seriously. Knowing that quality was a key priority, one of the first important choices we made with the members was to establish a strict process of selecting wines that would be presented at tastings and seminars, with the wineries allowing us to make the decisions about which wines would be chosen. Just because a winery was a member of All About Greek Wine did not mean that all of the wines would be included at the events, especially seminars, when only a few wines could be shown. The wineries accepted this process and understood that it was best for the group, even though they all shared the cost of the campaign, to do this. It was not unusual for winemakers to be presenting wines from other wineries in the group. Many times they had traveled all the way from Greece to come for an event in the US, and sometimes we did not show the wines. It was amazing how everyone believed in this project and how high we had set the bar. We knew we must present the elite of Greek wine in order to have the chance to draw the attention of key opinion makers and trade in the highly competitive US market. Another critical decision was to focus on the mainstream market. It's not that we ignored the Greek communities, but it was obvious that we would have to establish Greek wine in the mainstream market along with all of the other well-known regions for our work to be successful. We knew our products could compete with anything in the market, and the big challenge was convincing people just to try them. We had something unique to offer the US market, other than the usual suspects, which is the same international varieties that were being grown throughout the world. The Greek wine sector, because of lower production, remote and highly fragmented vineyards, and higher production costs associated with the difficult terrain that requires most things to be done by hand, could not compete in the lower price levels. So we chose to position the wines in the medium to upper price categories, where the sweet spot for Greek wine in the US is between $15 and $25, and then goes up from there. Considering the quality of the wines being produced, and because they are relatively new to the market in these price categories, Greek wines offer an excellent ratio of price to quality. One of our most effective strategies that we used from day one was to bring as many media, trade, and wine educators to Greece to experience firsthand what the Greek wine industry has to offer. We plan our trips to include the complete Greek cultural experience that combines wine, traditional Greek cuisine, history, and of course the people of Greece. Once someone has had the chance to visit the vineyards, speak to our winemakers, and enjoy our culture, they become ambassadors for life and continue to spread the word about Greek wine. Because of budget constraints, we decided to focus on the top of the American wine pyramid, reaching out to media, trade, and educational institutions with the goal that these opinion makers and gatekeepers would influence the end consumer. Journalists from all of the top wine publications continue to visit Greece, which is now viewed as one of the hottest emerging wine regions in the world. Postings, references, and articles about Greek wine now appear in media on a daily basis, especially considering our small size compared to other much larger established regions. Virtually all of the top media outlets regularly cover Greek wine, including such outlets as Wine Advocate, Wine Spectator, the New York Times, San Francisco Chronicle, Wine and Spirits, CNN, the Huffington Post, and the list goes on and on. Greek wine is what we call a hand sell in the market, a unique product that requires someone to tell your story for you. And for this we have approached a tremendous army of sommeliers, the gatekeepers, to do this for us. It is this new, young, passionate breed of sommelier who create and control the wine programs in all of the top restaurants and who are always looking for the next new wine to introduce the clients to. We have partnered with the top sommelier organizations like the Court of Master Sommelier because we knew that the Greek wine brand would have to be built in the restaurant. Today, any respectable American sommelier will have some Greek wine on their list. The retail market for Greek wine is also improving dramatically, and in fact a recent survey we conducted among a small portion of importers showed that in just the New York City market, well over 1,000 restaurants and retail shops are now selling Greek wine. Another important group with tremendous influence in the wine and food industry are the educational institutions that train the next restaurateur, sommelier, and chef. We have maintained an ongoing educational presence with several higher institutions of learning like the Cornell University, UC Davis, the Culinary Institute of America, Johnson & Wales Culinary Universities, and organizations like the Society of Wine Educators, the Institute of Tourism and Hotels in Quebec, the Wine Writers Circle of Canada, the Professional Sommelier of Canada, and many others. After the initial 3 years of private financing, the wineries asked us to partner with the National and Professional Organization of the Wine and Vine of Greece, et al., and the Hellenic Foreign Trade Board in order to apply for EU funding support together with help from the Greek Ministry of Agriculture, Development and Food. In 2006, our proposal was approved and we launched a new program that allowed us to take the work we have begun privately as All About Greek Wine to another level. With HEPO as the execution organization and the interprofessional organization as the beneficiary, we added ongoing media outreach and eventually created the North American Greek Wine Bureau that we now manage for the Greek wine sector. Our partnership with this organization is now in its 8th year, and we think that our work has just begun. Another dividend that the positive image of Greek wine has brought about is that many of America's top importers are adding Greek wines to their portfolios, something that has been critical for driving the positive sales we are seeing. Well-established importers like Skronic Wine Selections, Winebone, Frederick Wildman, Joseph Brothers, Verity, and earlier Gelato, and many others are now leading the way for Greek wine. Another bright spot on the horizon that bodes well for Greek wine is the amount of attention that Santorini wines are receiving. A few years ago, we approached the wineries of the island to come together to do a regional program for Santorini, which became known as Wines from Santorini. Because it was already one of the top travel destinations in the world, our goal was to connect the well-known name of Santorini with wine in order to have it as a flagship to help raise the profile for all of Greek wine. For us, it was a no-brainer to build on the positive image that this amazing island already had, and it continues to pay big dividends for their wines, which are being compared to the best in the world. When articles are written about terroir-driven wines, wines with a sense of place, as we say, and unique grape varieties, Santorini and Arcitico are usually always included. With great satisfaction, we read for the first consecutive year the results of the Wine and Spirits magazine survey on wine trends in the American restaurant scene. In 2013, the Wines of Greece closed in on New Zealand, one of the most successful winemaking countries, since the New Zealand wines are some of the higher in value wines in the market. Greece is establishing its own niche in the American wine market, and the magazine devotes a special place in the poll for Greece. 4 Greek wineries were chosen last year, and this year 4 Greek wineries were included amongst the most popular wineries on the American restaurant scene. The news from New York is just as encouraging, where, according to the popular Zagat Restaurant Guide in 2012, over 30% of the top 100 restaurants in New York City have Greek wines on their list, excluding, of course, regionally focused restaurants. Greek wine is also a regular participant in many of the major trade and consumer events, like the Aspen Food and Wine Classic, which is the #1 trend-setting food and wine festival in the US. Our signature event, though, still continues to be our annual spring roadshow that regularly includes stops in the top markets around the US and Canada, like Toronto, Montreal, Chicago, San Francisco, and of course always ends in New York. We understand that this is a never-ending journey for Greek wine, so we do not intend to sit back and rest in our laurels. We are always on the lookout for new trends and adapt our activities as the market develops and changes. With this in mind, through social media, we're targeting the millennials, 25 to 35 years old, since they are more open to trying new things. For this younger generation, we want to convert them over to Greek wine early in their drinking careers. They are also one of the categories that buy a higher percentage of imported wines. The key approach to reaching the millennials is maintaining authenticity, and Greek wine has a great story to tell. Since their lifestyle prevents them from traveling often, they prefer to travel through their experiences and choices, while of course they surf the internet. One of the most interesting events we have done utilizing popularity of social networking was a webinar broadcast over the internet with some of our top winemakers tasting and discussing the wines with participants that were tasting the same wines we had sent them. Still available online. During the webinar, an important number of masters of wine, master sommeliers, journalists, bloggers, and major wine buyers from around the US participated. We continue to keep Greek wine a vital part of the ongoing wine conversation taking place on the social media networks and have placed a great emphasis on reaching out to the bloggers who keep this conversation going. Greek wine is now an annual sponsor of the US Wine Bloggers Conference. We're going to be participating for the 4th year this summer. In closing, I wanted to emphasize that even though Greek wine has come a long way in the last 10 years, we still have a very long road ahead. The success of the campaign comes from the support of many in the Greek wine sector in the US, including the Interprofessional Organization, the Hellenic Foreign Trade Board, importers, writers, bloggers, sommeliers, and lots of others. But in the beginning, it took the faith and persistence of those first group of winemakers who believed in themselves to give the rest of Greek wine the opportunity to become a player on the international stage. In putting this presentation together, it has been an interesting chance for me to look back over the last decade and see what this campaign has accomplished. But for me, it is enough satisfaction to see that the critical mass, a forward momentum has been established for Greek wine, and with some continued prodding, we will keep going on its own. It will keep going on its own into a bright future ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Perpera. You paint a very comprehensive picture of your efforts, but I'm sure there must be some questions from the audience out of interest mostly. So let's have some questions. Thank you very much.
Hello, good morning. Actually, I wanted to ask you because I lived abroad and I was looking for Greek products, especially for wine, olive oil, and feta cheese. And I went to a wine shop and I requested for a Greek wine, and they said they didn't have one. And when I asked why, they told me because it's really cheap, so it wasn't profitable for them. So even though I was in a country that it was a Muslim country and alcohol is not allowed, it is allowed to be sold and you can consume it. So are you planning in the future to expand and look for the demand, because a lot of Greek people are immigrating, so demand for Greek products in some countries maybe they will rise. Thank you.
You mean in other countries?
In other countries. For example, I was in United Arab Emirates, Dubai.
First of all, this is something that we have also experienced in the US. We've been at an event in Las Vegas and people were asking us what's wrong with your wines, why do they have these prices? They consider them to be very good, actually inexpensive prices. But this, for us, it's a very good thing right now, because we, as I mentioned on my presentation, we're trying to establish Greek wine in the middle and upper categories as a high quality product. So this is a good problem, I think, to have. Now, in terms of our focus, our main focus for the national program is the US, Canada, China, and now we're in discussions about doing much more in the European market to begin with. Of course, we don't have unlimited budget resources, and we would love to be able to do more in other countries, but this would be our first focus right now.
Another question from the audience? There's time for one more question if someone has a question. I can just say I'm very happy to see the Samos bottle there, which is my favorite wine, sweet tooth. Unless we have any questions from the audience, let's again thank Ms. Perpera very much for your presentation.